In a quiet corner of New York City, where towering skyscrapers cast shadows on narrow streets, stood Henry's Bakery. The once vibrant shop, now faded with peeling paint and a broken sign, was a reflection of its aging owner, Henry. For 50 years, Henry had baked loaves of bread every morning, filling the air with their comforting aroma. Yet, the world had moved on. Big chains and online delivery services had stolen his customers. Now Henry spent his days watching unsold loaves pile up, his heart heavy with nostalgia but clinging to the hope that his bread, like life, was still worth sharing. One cold morning, as Henry sat in his quiet bakery, he noticed something unusual: a sleek black SUV parked outside. Moments later, tall men in suits, who appeared to be bodyguards, stepped out, followed by a young man who looked out of place in the humble neighborhood. It was Baron Trump. Henry, puzzled and intrigued, watched as Baron entered the bakery. Despite his poised demeanor, the boy's expression carried a hint of loneliness. "Can I have a loaf of bread, please?" Baron asked softly, his voice kind but reserved. Henry's shaky hands carefully wrapped a fresh loaf, his wrinkled fingers smoothing the paper with care. The smell of warm bread filled the air, but the moment felt different, special. As Baron watched silently, his sharp blue eyes scanned the bakery's modest interior. "This place is peaceful," he murmured, almost to himself. Henry smiled faintly. "It's quiet, yes. Not many come here anymore, but bread, my boy, is like life, simple, warm, and meant to be shared." When Baron asked how much the loaf cost, Henry hesitated. Though he could have used the money, something stirred within him. "For you, it's free," Henry said, sliding the loaf across the counter. Baron furrowed his brow. "I can pay. I should pay." But Henry insisted, calling it a gift, a small act of kindness. Baron paused, visibly moved, and gave Henry a faint smile. "Thank you, sir," he said sincerely before leaving the bakery. As the SUV disappeared into the city's bustle, Henry stood by the counter staring after it. Though he didn't fully understand why, his heart felt lighter, hopeful even, as if his simple gesture had been far more significant than he realized. Something had shifted, though he couldn't yet name it. 2 days after his first visit, Henry was sweeping the floor of his quiet bakery when the black SUV pulled up once again. His heart raced as the same suited men stepped out, this time carrying a large box. Moments later, Baron Trump followed, his face calm but kind. As he entered, he placed the box gently on the counter. "This is for you," Baron said simply. Henry, trembling with curiosity, untied the ribbon and opened the box. Inside was a beautiful golden plaque that read, "To Henry, the baker of kindness, a gift of gratitude from Baron Trump." Beneath the plaque were several envelopes filled with more money than Henry had ever seen. Tears welled up in his eyes as he looked at Baron. "I don't understand. Why would you do this?" Baron smiled softly. "You gave me something priceless. Your kindness reminded me of my grandfather. He always said, 'A good heart is the greatest gift.'" Henry could barely find the words to respond. His small act of generosity, a simple loaf of bread, had brought him more than he could ever have imagined. After Baron and his guards left, Henry sat at the counter, staring at the plaque and the envelopes. He felt overwhelmed, unsure of what to do with the gift. Memories of his late wife Clara came flooding back. Clara had always believed in giving without expecting anything in return. Together, they had opened the bakery 50 years ago, using her family's cherished bread recipe. In those early days, the shop was lively, filled with customers and laughter. But after Clara passed away, everything changed. The joy and warmth that once defined the bakery faded, and Henry struggled to keep up with the competition. As he placed the plaque on a shelf, Henry thought of Clara and her unwavering belief in the power of kindness. The gift from Baron rekindled a sense of purpose within him, reminding him of the values he and Clara had once shared. Though he couldn't fully grasp the significance of Baron's gesture, Henry knew it had reignited a spark of hope in his heart. That night, Henry whispered to himself, "Clara, you were right. Kindness truly does come full circle." The plaque now stood as a testament to the impact of one simple act of giving. The days following Baron Trump's generous gift were a whirlwind of emotions for Henry. The golden plaque and envelopes of money were a lifeline, yet they left him feeling overwhelmed. For the first time in years, hope had found its way back into his life. However, the peace was short-lived. One morning, as Henry arrived at the bakery, he noticed an envelope slipped under the door. His name was written on it in neat, unfamiliar handwriting. Curious yet uneasy, he opened it to find a cryptic note. "You did something kind, but be careful. Not everyone appreciates good deeds." Henry's hands trembled as he read the message. Who could have sent it? Why would someone warn him? He glanced outside, but the street was empty, save for the usual passers-by. Brushing off his unease, he opened the bakery and tried to focus on his work. Yet the feeling of being watched lingered, making every creak of the floorboards and every shadow feel ominous. Around noon, Baron's black SUV pulled up outside once more. This time, Baron didn't come in. One of his guards entered instead, placing a sealed envelope on the counter. "From Mr. Trump," the guard said curtly before leaving. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note from Baron. "Henry, your bread reminded me of simpler times. I'd like to order more loaves for my family. Let's talk soon." Henry felt a spark of happiness but couldn't shake the memory of the strange note. His worries deepened 2 days later when Baron returned to the bakery, accompanied by 2 guards. This time, he asked to speak with Henry privately. "Why did you give me that loaf for free?" Baron asked, his voice curious but quiet. Henry smiled, though his heart was heavy with the morning's warning. "Kindness is free, my boy. Life is hard enough. If a loaf of bread can make it better, why not share it?" Baron seemed thoughtful, nodding slowly. "My family has everything money can buy, but that loaf reminded me of my grandfather. He used to bake bread with me when I was little. It brought back memories." Their conversation was interrupted by a loud noise outside. A black car screeched to a halt near the bakery. Baron and Henry exchanged uneasy glances as one of the guards ordered them to stay inside. Henry peered through the window as the guards approached the car. A man stepped out, his face partially obscured by a hat. He handed over a small package, nodded, and left without a word. When the guards returned, their faces were grim. "It's nothing to worry about," one of them said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Henry turned to Baron, his voice trembling. "What's going on? Is this because of you?" Baron shook his head, looking just as confused. "I don't think so, but something feels off." For the rest of the day, Henry couldn't shake the feeling that his act of kindness had somehow drawn unwanted attention. As he locked the doors that evening, the cryptic note echoed in his mind. "Be careful." What had begun as a simple gesture now felt like the beginning of something much larger, something he didn't fully understand. Henry's routine at the bakery had always been simple. Early mornings, the comforting rhythm of kneading dough, and the satisfaction of providing fresh bread to the community. But lately, unease had crept into his life. It began subtly, a strange shadow outside his window late at night, muffled footsteps that vanished when he turned to look. Then came the letters, parchment stained with ominous ink. Their messages were brief and chilling. "Leave before it's too late." Baron, the nobleman who had taken Henry under his wing, acted swiftly. He assigned a contingent of guards to investigate, their loyalty as unyielding as their steel. The guards followed the trail of threats, uncovering whispers of a deeper conspiracy. These weren't mere acts of petty intimidation. The threats were traced back to powerful figuresque people who thrived in the shadows, their influence stretching far beyond the small town where Henry's bakery stood. The whispers pointed to Mr. Langston, a man known for his ruthless tactics and insatiable greed. He saw Henry's bakery as a prime piece of real estate, a stepping stone to further his ambitions. Langston's efforts to sow fear were strategic, aimed at driving Henry away without direct confrontation. But he underestimated the resolve of Henry and his unlikely ally. Baron decided the time had come to face Langston head-on. He and Henry prepared for the meeting, each steeling themselves for what lay ahead. Baron's status as a nobleman afforded him certain privileges, but it was his genuine concern for Henry's well-being that fueled his determination. Henry, though frightened, refused to back down. The bakery was more than a livelihood. It was a symbol of his resilience and a source of joy for the community. The confrontation took place in Baron's grand hall, its vaulted ceilings bearing witness to many a fierce negotiation. Langston arrived flanked by his own men, his confidence oozing with every step. The air was thick with tension as the two sides faced off. "You've overstepped," Barron began, his voice firm yet composed. "Threatening an honest man who has done nothing but bring light to this town is a coward's game, Langston." Langston's smirk faltered for a moment before he recovered. "It's just business, Barron. That bakery is standing in the way of progress." "Progress?" Henry interjected, his voice steady despite the fear that coiled in his chest. "You mean greed? The bakery isn't just a building, it's a home for the community. People come together here, and I won't let you take that away." Langston's eyes narrowed. "You think a few loaves of bread and a kind word will stop me? You're naive." Barron stepped forward, his presence commanding. "Perhaps he is, but I'm not. You've made a grave mistake targeting one of my own. If you persist, you'll face consequences far greater than you can imagine." Langston hesitated, the weight of Barron's words sinking in. For all his bravado, he knew better than to openly defy someone of Barron's stature. With a begrudging nod, he signaled his men to leave. "This isn't over," Langston muttered as he departed. "No," Barron replied, his gaze unyielding. "It is." With Langston's retreat, peace returned to Henry's life. But Barron wasn't content to simply neutralize the threat. He wanted to ensure Henry's future was secure. A few days after the confrontation, Barron presented Henry with a gift that left him speechless. The deed to the bakery. "This is yours now," Barron said, placing the parchment in Henry's trembling hands. "No one can take it from you. Consider it a reward for your courage and a testament to the power of kindness." Tears welled in Henry's eyes as he tried to find the words to express his gratitude. The bakery was no longer just a place where he worked. It was a legacy, a symbol of triumph over adversity. News of Barron's gesture spread through the town, inspiring a wave of goodwill. People began to see the bakery not just as a shop, but as a beacon of hope. They volunteered to help Henry expand his business, painting the walls, planting flowers outside, and spreading word of his delicious goods far and wide. The bakery thrived, its shelves filled with pastries and breads that bore the unmistakable mark of Henry's passion. More importantly, it became a gathering place for the community, where people shared stories, celebrated milestones, and supported one another in times of need. Barron's act of kindness had a ripple effect, encouraging others to embrace compassion in their own lives. The town grew stronger, its people more connected, all because one man refused to let fear and greed triumph over hope and resilience. Henry often thought back to the threats that had once cast a shadow over his life. What began as a campaign of intimidation had transformed into a story of defiance, generosity, and unity. And every morning, as he opened the doors to his bakery, he was reminded that kindness, though often underestimated, was the most powerful force of all.